Thanks for joining us at XM.com. This is the Weekly Outlook. I'm Christina Marujos, and with me today is lead investment analyst Raf Boyajian. Now, we have two major central bank meetings coming up this week, one of which might give us the first rate hike of 2022 and a flurry of data. And all this paints a picture of an exciting week for markets. So let's get right to it, Rafi. Starting with Canada, because the Bank of Canada meets on Wednesday. It's going to be the first major central bank that holds its first policy meeting for 2022. Now, there's a lot of speculation of a rate hike, even though the bank has signaled that there won't be any raising of rates until the second quarter. Do you think we will get a surprise rate hike this week, and what would that mean for the loonie?
Well, Christina, like you said, there's a lot of speculation. Expectations had already been steadily rising for quite a few rate hikes by the Bank of Canada for this year. And then after the recent strong employment and inflation data that we got out of Canada recently, now markets are pretty certain that the Bank of Canada will not wait until April, which was their last guidance at the last meeting. And there's about 85% probability that's priced in by the markets that Bank of Canada will move early. So despite the fact that this would still be quite a way off from the Bank of Canada's last guidance. So it's not exactly, if they do decide to raise rates, it's not exactly would have been a telegraphed rate hike. So that normally you would expect to see a big market reaction on however, this time around, because markets are pretty certain, despite the fact that we haven't had any signals about a rate hike, that the Bank of Canada will act on Wednesday. We might not necessarily see a huge reaction in the loonie. However, should the Bank of Canada decide to, at the same time, be quite bullish about their forecast and signal that a lot more rate hikes are on the way, then that could be what would make more of an impact as far as the loonie is concerned.
Crossing into the United States now, the Federal Reserve also meets this week on Wednesday again. But apart from that, we have a flurry of data out of the United States, with the most crucial ones probably being the quarter four GDP numbers on Thursday, followed, of course, by the CPI inflation numbers on Friday. Do you think we'll see a hawkish Fed this week, and how will the dollar move?
It's certainly going to be a crucial week for the dollar, which is now back to the levels it was before last week's dip. So if the Fed is hawkish and data is strong, that's probably going to determine what happens to the dollar, whether it's going to hold within this range that it's been comfortable in for the last couple of months, or if we do see a convincing breakout, whether to the downside or the upside of that range. With the Fed, I think there's little doubt that there's going to be more hawkish sound bites coming up on Wednesday. Powell will probably signal a rate hike for March, and we could also hear a bit more about the Fed's plans around its balance sheet runoff. There's risk that, though, Powell might play it safe and try hard not to rattle the markets, especially now that we're seeing a bit of a sell-off in the stock markets, which would be probably seen as somewhat dovish and could be negative for the dollar. But the data will be important too, and though that could lift the dollar, because there's GDP for the fourth quarter and PCE inflation. US GDP growth probably moved up a gear in the fourth quarter, while the closely watched core PCE price index, which is the main inflation metric that the Fed looks at, that probably edged up to 4.8% in December, all of which would confirm that the US economy is robust and that inflation isn't going to go away anytime soon.
And speaking of data, let's cross into Europe now, because we've got flash PMIs coming up in both the Euro area and the United Kingdom. Now, what are the risks for the euro and the pound, considering that Omicron likely weighed in growth at the start of January?
Well, the euro has been struggling lately after its bounce back proved short-lived. If we see any positive surprises, that could lift the single currency, but overall it's probably going to be the dollar setting direction next week, because the like you said, we've got the Omicron outbreak in Europe that probably did weigh on growth. And still similar story in the UK as well. But the main difference with the UK is that there is a bit of political turbulence at the moment. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is under a lot of pressure to quit following the Partygate scandal. He'll probably be able to hang in there for a while longer, though. But of course, you never know with the world of politics. Anything could happen. But the question is, would Johnson leaving and getting replaced by another Tory candidate, would that have much of an impact on sterling? Probably not. So although we could see some knee-jerk reaction to the PMI data, if there are any big surprises, overall it's probably going to be down to the dollar too, as far as what happens to the euro and pound.
And before I let you go, Rafi, let's have a quick look at the Aussie and Kiwi, because there's quarterly CPI data on the way. And since we don't get frequent inflation numbers out of Australia and New Zealand, how important will these be for the Antipodean pair?
Well, they will be quite important because, like you said, we don't get monthly updates. And given that inflation now is all the rage lately, they're certainly going to be getting a lot of attention. We're likely to see CPI picking up in the fourth quarter in both Australia and New Zealand. There's a good chance that there should be a boost for the Aussie and the Kiwi. However, markets have already priced in several rate hikes this year for both the RBA and the RBNZ. So the extent of potential gains will likely depend on the broader market mood and, of course, what happens to the US dollar, because both currencies are very sensitive to risk appetite. So even if you do see strong CPI data, if the market mood remains kind of jittery like it is at the moment, then we might not see a huge boost to the Antipodian currencies.
Rafi, it was great having you with me today. And thank you for joining us here at XM.com for the Weekly Outlook.